would like to share an intriguing chess strategy that involves surprising your opponent. Typically, opponents expect you to focus on achieving checkmate, but this strategy involves targeting their queen instead. By adopting this approach, you can gain a significant material advantage, which can ultimately lead to a victory later in the game. Let's begin with this trap. You can stick to your regular move, such as playing pawn to e4, which is commonly seen in this situation. If your opponent opts for the Scandinavian defense, one of black's main choices, you can transition into the Smith-Morra gambit. After playing pawn to c3 and sacrificing the pawn with pawn captures knight on c3, you gain a development advantage and long-term initiative. Typically, black responds symmetrically with knight to c6 after knight to f3. At this point, black realizes the potential threat of your move pawn to d4, attacking their knight, and often prefers to play pawn to d6 to prevent your pawn from advancing and then safely develop their knight to f6 without worrying about potential attacks. However, you disrupt their plans by playing bishop to c4, which prompts black to play knight to f6. Despite black's response, you proceed with pawn to d4, putting black in a difficult position. This trap is often unfamiliar to opponents, leading them to make mistakes and fall into your dangerous attack. For example, if black captures your knight on c3 with their knight, you happily recapture with pawn takes c3, but you don't trade queens because your goal is to win black's queen. Instead, you capture on d8 first, employing a tactical motif seen in previous traps. After black's king captures on d8, you secure a winning position by capturing the queen. If you are an experienced double player, you may already be familiar with the previous trap in the Scandinavian defense. However, the next trap will likely be new to your opponents, giving you an advantage. You can enter this trap against the Scandinavian defense if you start with pawn to e4, and after black responds with pawn to d5, you play knight to c3. Alternatively, you can force your opponent into this variation regardless of their initial move. In either case, you begin with knight to c3, an uncommon move that is perfectly acceptable as you develop a piece. Black's most popular response is pawn to d5, aiming to control the center and potentially create threats. You then play pawn to e4, feigning an exchange offer. After black captures your pawn, instead of immediately recapturing, you play bishop to c4. Your opponent might think they can now defend the pawn with knight to f6, but you continue with pawn to d3, again appearing to offer a trade that you never intended to accept. When black captures on d3, you continue playing in a gambit style with knight to f3, developing another piece. Since your opponent is accustomed to your apparent material losses with each move, they might gladly capture one more pawn on c2. However, instead of capturing back with queen takes c2 or queen takes d8, you already know the trick. It's time to sacrifice your bishop with bishop takes f7, surprising your opponent who thought their pawn was attacking. By ignoring the threat and sacrificing your bishop, you follow the same motif of capturing the queen with queen takes d8, securing a winning position. If you're interested in exploring further variations and strategies, I have another dedicated video on this specific approach. However, if you prefer not to engage in these special trap openings, you can continue with your usual moves and tactics. That concludes our discussion for today, and we'll reconvene in the next episode of Get Smart. Take care and peace.